The Burj Al Arab has a room you can book tonight for $800. Not a standard room, a suite. In the hotel that invented the concept of 7 stars. In the building that single-handedly put Dubai on the global map. In the property that was charging $10,000 a night for its royal suite as recently as 2019, and turning people away at that price because the waiting list was longer than the availability. $800. The discount is not seasonal. It is not a promotional package tied to a concert or a sporting event. It is the market rate. And the market, in 2026, is telling the Burj Al Arab something that no amount of architectural grandeur, no fleet of Rolls-Royces, no gold leaf afternoon tea service can contradict. The world has moved on, and the hotel that was supposed to be permanent proof that Dubai had arrived is now running quietly on the logic of a property that can no longer fill its rooms at the price its identity requires. This is not about one bad quarter. This is about what happens when a symbol outlives the thing it was a symbol of. Before you look away, understand what that price collapse actually means for Dubai. Because the Burj Al Arab was never just a hotel. It was a financial instrument, a diplomatic tool, a piece of nation branding infrastructure that did more work per square meter than any building constructed in the 20th century. When it opened in 1999, it generated international media coverage that the Dubai government could not have purchased at any price. Every magazine spread, every travel documentary, every aerial photograph of that sail-shaped silhouette at sunset was an advertisement for a city that most of the world had never heard of. The return on that building was not measured in room revenue. It was measured in the wave of investment, tourism, and global attention that it triggered. The Burj Al Arab did not make money in the conventional sense, it made Dubai. And that distinction matters enormously for what is happening to it now, because a hotel that was built to be a symbol is in serious trouble the moment the symbol stops working. The occupancy numbers are not published. Jumeirah Group, which operates the Burj Al Arab, does not release property-level occupancy data in any of its financial communications. What exists in the public record is a combination of rate data from booking platforms, analyst estimates from Gulf hospitality research firms, and the testimony of travel industry professionals who book clients into the property and watch the availability calendar in real time. What that combination shows is an occupancy trajectory that, between 2019 and 2024, moved in a direction inconsistent with the hotel's historical positioning. The Royal Suite that was commanding $10,000 a night and achieving it consistently through the mid-2010s is now available at rates that STR, the hospitality data firm that tracks Gulf hotel performance, would classify as revenue per available room figures more consistent with a luxury property under pressure than with a trophy asset operating at its designed price point. The compression happened in layers, and each layer tells a different story about why. The first layer is supply. In 1999, the Burj Al Arab had no meaningful ultra-luxury competition in Dubai. The city had good hotels, some excellent ones, but nothing that occupied the same category. That category monopoly was the economic foundation of the $10,000 room rate. You paid it not just for the suite, but for the absence of alternatives. By 2015, Dubai had the Atlantis Royal, the one and only one Za'abil, the Four Seasons at Jumeirah Beach, the Bulgari Resort on its own island, and a pipeline of ultra-luxury properties that has not stopped delivering new keys since. Each new opening redistributed the finite pool of ultra-high net worth travelers willing to spend at the top of the Dubai market. The Burj Al Arab's share of that pool shrank not because it got worse, but because the pool got more options. In hospitality economics, a monopoly rate and a competitive market rate are not versions of the same thing. They are different products priced by different mechanisms. The Burj Al Arab was built for a monopoly market that no longer exists. The second layer is the guest profile. The demographic that filled the Burj Al Arab at peak rates through the 2000s and early 2010s was specific: Russian oligarchs, Chinese business elite, Gulf royals and their extended families, Indian industrialists, for whom the Burj Al Arab was the only acceptable address in Dubai because it was the only address in Dubai that registered as significant to their own social networks. That demographic has not disappeared, but it has fragmented, redistributed, and in some cases, departed the Dubai market entirely. Russian ultra-high net worth travel to Dubai surged after 2022 for obvious geopolitical reasons, but that surge benefited the broader Dubai luxury market rather than concentrating specifically in the Burj Al Arab, which no longer holds the positional monopoly that made it the default choice for status-driven accommodation decisions. The Chinese luxury traveler, who represented a growing share of the hotel's revenue through the mid-2010s, has been slower to return to international travel post-pandemic than any comparable demographic globally, and when they do travel internationally, the competitive set they consider has expanded well beyond what it was when the Burj Al Arab last operated at its designed price point. Have you ever watched a luxury brand discover that exclusivity, once lost, cannot simply be reclaimed by raising the price back to where it was? Gerald Lawless spent more than 2 decades at the helm of Jumeirah Group, the Dubai government-owned hospitality company that operates the Burj Al Arab. He oversaw the hotel through its peak years and understood better than anyone the fragility of the position it occupied. In interviews from the mid-2010s, Lawless consistently described the Burj Al Arab not as a conventional hotel asset, but as a brand pillar, a property whose value to the Jumeirah portfolio was structural rather than purely financial, the asset that gave every other Jumeirah property its positioning claim. That framing was accurate and strategically sound when the Burj Al Arab's brand still commanded the premium that justified the description. The question that Lawless never needed to answer publicly, because it did not arise during his tenure in the acute form it presents today, is what the brand pillar does for the portfolio when the pillar is no longer standing at full height. Jumeirah Group has responded to the Burj Al Arab's pricing pressure with a strategy visible in the booking data, if not in any press release. The hotel has systematically expanded its amenity revenue model, pushing afternoon tea packages, private beach access experiences, and non-guest dining experiences that allow the property to monetize its architectural spectacle for visitors who are not paying room rates. The atrium lobby tour, the helipad experience, the submarine journey. These are genuine revenue lines, and they serve a real market appetite from tourists who want the Burj Al Arab photograph without the Burj Al Arab bill. But they are also a structural acknowledgement that the hotel's primary value proposition, the overnight guest experience at a rate that reflects genuine ultra-luxury positioning, is no longer carrying the revenue load it was designed to carry. You do not build a submarine experience for guests who are paying $10,000 a night. You build it for the visitors you are trying to monetize because the guests are not arriving at the price you need. The building itself is 27 years old. In the context of architectural landmarks, this is nothing. The Eiffel Tower is 136 years old and has a longer queue than it did in 1920. But the Eiffel Tower is a public monument maintained by a government with an unlimited incentive to preserve it. The Burj Al Arab is a hotel. It is subject to the maintenance economics of a hospitality asset that must fund its own upkeep from operating revenue. The rooms that were cutting edge in 1999 have been refurbished multiple times, but the fundamental design language of the interiors, the gold and blue palette, the maximalist opulence that was the visual signature of turn-of-the-millennium luxury, reads differently in 2026 than it did when it was installed. The aesthetic that once said impossible now says dated, not to every eye, not uniformly. But to the design-literate, ultra-high net worth traveler whose accommodation choices are partially driven by the visual content those choices produce for their social media presence, the Burj Al Arab's interiors present a specific problem. They photograph as history rather than as aspiration. And in the attention economy that now governs luxury travel decisions more powerfully than any other single factor, photographing as history is a market positioning problem that no amount of gold leaf can solve. This is the trap that no iconic building escapes cleanly. The more specific a structure's visual identity, the more powerfully it communicates in its era of design and the more completely it dates in the era that follows. The Burj Al Arab was the most visually specific building in the world when it opened. That specificity was its genius. It is now its constraint. What the Burj Al Arab faces in 2026 is not a crisis that can be solved by a refurbishment cycle or a marketing campaign or a strategic rate adjustment. It faces the fundamental problem of a symbol in a world that has developed new symbols. Dubai has the Bulgari on its own island. It has the Atlantis Royal with its vertical infinity pools and its Nobu residences. It has properties that opened last year and will open next year that are competing for the same ultra-luxury guest with design languages that were not possible in 1999 and price structures that reflect a competitive market rather than a monopoly position. The Burj Al Arab cannot become those properties. It can only be what it is. And what it is the most famous hotel ever built in a city that has outgrown the moment that made it famous. The sail still stands. The lights still change color at night. The Rolls Royces still line up on the causeway at arrivals. Everything that was there in 1999 is still there. Everything except the world that made it necessary. What gets preserved when the symbol outlives the thing it was built to prove? If you stayed at the Burj Al Arab in its peak years and went back recently, tell us in the comments what had changed and what the difference felt like from the inside.